Understanding the new 900-page bill. What seniors must know today, we begin with an important breakdown of the massive 900-page bill that has become the center of national conversation. For many Americans, especially seniors living on fixed incomes, this legislation contains changes that could affect your monthly budget, your access to food assistance, your health care, and even the tax benefits you rely on. In this audio guide, we're going to go through every major section in a clear, calm, senior-friendly way. No confusion, no political spin, just the facts and what they mean for your daily life. This first part focuses on how the bill is structured, why it matters, and which groups of Americans will feel the effects first. Whether you're receiving Social Security, SSI, SSDI, SNAP, or Medicaid, or simply trying to understand what's changing in this country, this is information you absolutely deserve to hear. Let's begin with the most important point. The bill is real, long, and far-reaching. It touches almost every corner of American life. What makes it even more serious is that many of these changes do not appear in headlines or quick news updates. Instead, they're hidden deep inside sections, subsections, and technical wording that most people will never read. But the consequences are very real, especially for older adults who depend on government programs for security and stability. The bill opens by locking in what's called the Thrifty Food Plan, the formula the government uses to decide how much SNAP assistance families receive. Most people assume that benefits will go up whenever food prices rise, but this bill restricts that. It forces SNAP to adjust only for inflation, not for the actual rising cost of healthy food. And as you know, many times the price of fresh food increases faster than the general inflation rate. For seniors who rely on SNAP, that means your benefits may not keep up with the true cost of groceries. Another signal of how strict the bill is comes from the rules around household size. Even if you have a large family or live in a multi-generation household, which is incredibly common among seniors, the maximum benefits cannot exceed twice the amount given to a four-person family. That means if you live with adult children or grandchildren, your household assistance will not scale proportionally. Next comes one of the most impactful changes: work requirements. The bill tightens these rules for adults between 18 and 65. Seniors above 65 are not required to work, but here's why this still matters to older Americans. If you have adult children or grandchildren living with you who fall between the ages of 18 and 65, and they are not working at least 80 hours a month, your entire household may lose access to benefits. The bill allows exceptions for disability, pregnancy, and tribal communities, but for everyone else, the enforcement will become much stricter. What's more, the bill makes it significantly harder for states to pause these work requirements during tough economic times. In the past, high unemployment areas could temporarily suspend strict rules. That flexibility is now largely removed. Only Alaska and Hawaii have temporary exemptions, and even those expire in 2028. Another subtle change concerns your monthly expenses. You may know that utilities, including heating and electricity, are normally part of SNAP calculations, but in this bill, only households with an elderly or disabled member can continue using the standard utility allowance. This means seniors living alone still qualify, but seniors living with working-age adults may see benefits reduced because the household no longer meets the exemption requirement. Even more surprising, internet expenses are no longer counted at all. This is concerning because nearly everything today, from Social Security applications to telemedicine, requires online access. Removing the internet from SNAP calculations does not reflect modern reality, and it may leave households with less support even as essential online services continue to expand. Lastly, the bill adds new pressure on states by reducing the federal share of administrative costs. That means states will have fewer resources to manage applications, process renewals, and handle customer service. For seniors, this could mean longer wait times, delayed approvals, or even interruptions in benefits. The new SNAP rules, what they mean for seniors and families. In this second part of our deep dive audio guide, we continue exploring the major changes in the new 900-page bill, focusing specifically on SNAP benefits, household rules, and the new cost-sharing requirements placed on states. While these policies may seem distant or technical, they directly shape the level of support older Americans receive. And if you're caring for grandchildren, living in a shared household, or relying on state agencies to process your benefits, these changes matter more than ever. Let's begin with the stricter payment accuracy rules. For years, SNAP has operated with a partnership between federal and state governments. The federal government pays for the benefits themselves, while the states handle administration, processing applications, verifying income, and so on. Under this new bill, states are judged more harshly than ever before. If a state's error rate, the percentage of incorrect SNAP payments, rises above 6%, it immediately loses a portion of federal support. If that error rate exceeds 10%, the federal government cuts 15% of the state's funding. Now, why does this matter to seniors? Because when pressure goes up on state agencies, they tend to become more rigid. They ask for more verification documents, more proof of income, more repeated checks, and that often leads to delays. Seniors may wait longer for approvals. Households may face sudden benefit interruptions not because their income changed, but because the state became overly cautious trying to meet federal accuracy requirements. It becomes a system that prioritizes avoiding mistakes rather than helping people in need. The second major pressure point on states is financial. Historically, the USDA covered 50% of the administrative cost of SNAP, but starting in 2027, the federal share will drop to just 25%. That means states must pay 75% of the administrative expenses. Many states simply aren't prepared for this increase, and when they can't afford the extra cost, they often reduce staff. Fewer caseworkers means longer phone waits, slower processing, and more mistakes. For older Americans living on limited incomes, these delays can be devastating. A 1 week interruption in food assistance may not sound like much on paper, but for someone who budgets carefully or has mobility issues preventing multiple grocery trips, it's a real hardship. The bill's fine print doesn't always consider the reality of aging, limited transportation, fixed incomes, medical expenses, and the need for consistent support. Another change that hits close to home involves the National Education and Obesity Prevention Program, which has quietly provided community education on healthy eating. It funded local classes, grocery store tours, diabetes prevention programs, and senior center nutrition workshops. This program ends after 2025. While not as widely known as SNAP itself, it played a big role in guiding seniors toward affordable and nutritious food options, helping them stretch every dollar. Without it, many communities will lose local nutrition education services that were tailored to low-income families and older adults. The bill also restricts who can qualify for SNAP based on immigration status. Only U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, certain Cuban and Haitian entrants, and individuals lawfully residing under a compact of free association agreement are eligible. That means many legal residents with temporary or uncertain status will no longer qualify, even if they've lived here for years, worked, and paid taxes. This becomes especially significant in mixed status households where even if one member is ineligible, their income still counts against the household. Seniors living with adult children or grandchildren who have varying immigration statuses may see their SNAP amounts shrink, even though their household needs have not changed. One of the most concerning parts of this section is how the bill affects large households and multi-generational families. Many seniors in America today live with their children and grandchildren. Some do so for financial reasons, while others require caregiving or emotional support. Unfortunately, the bill caps benefits so that no household can receive more than twice the benefit amount of a family of four, regardless of how many people actually live in the home. This hurts cultural communities where multi-generation households are common, and it reduces resources for families who share responsibilities across age groups. Finally, we need to touch on what's missing from the bill: recognition of modern living costs. Removing internet expenses from allowable shelter deductions doesn't reflect reality. Seniors increasingly rely on online systems for healthcare appointments, telehealth, social security services, renewing IDs, communicating with family, and even managing financial accounts. Removing internet costs from SNAP calculations effectively says this isn't essential, even though for many seniors it absolutely is. The combined effect of these SNAP changes is significant. Benefits won't keep up with real food costs. States will face financial strain and administrative pressure. Multi-generational households may receive less support, and older Americans could see delays or reductions simply because the system is overwhelmed. Medicaid changes, how new rules could affect seniors' health care. In this third section of our deep dive audio guide, we turn to one of the most important areas of the bill: Medicaid changes. For seniors, especially those who are low income, disabled, or relying on long-term care, these changes could have a major impact on your access to medical support. While Medicare covers many older adults, Medicaid is essential for millions of Americans who depend on it for nursing home care, in-home assistance, prescription support, and coverage that Medicare alone doesn't provide. This part of the bill focuses heavily on cutting costs, tightening rules, and increasing oversight. Supporters of the bill say these changes are meant to reduce fraud and make the system more efficient. but critics warn that millions of people, including seniors, could lose coverage simply because the rules become too rigid. Let's start with something serious. The bill freezes two major Medicaid expansions that were designed to make enrollment easier for low-income seniors and adults. One of these expansions would have allowed more people to qualify for Medicare savings programs that help pay Medicare premiums, coinsurance, and deductibles. The second expansion would have simplified eligibility for Medicaid, CHIP, and the basic health program. Both of these were intended to help people who struggle with complex paperwork or limited digital access. But under the new bill, both expansions are placed under a full moratorium. That means states cannot adopt them, even if they want to make it easier for seniors to stay covered. Another major component of the bill targets duplicate enrollment. The intention behind this rule is to remove individuals who appear to be enrolled in Medicaid and CHIP at the same time. While this sounds like a simple housekeeping fix, the reality is different. Medicaid and CHIP databases in many states do not communicate well with each other. As a result, families who have children on CHIP and adults on Medicaid could face wrongful terminations. For seniors raising grandchildren, this is especially risky. If the system mistakenly removes a child from CHIP, reinstating coverage can take weeks or months. The bill also requires states to remove deceased individuals from Medicaid rolls more frequently. This seems like common sense, but once again, it demands new technology and administrative capacity that many states simply don't have. Without proper systems, the increased workload may slow down regular case processing, and seniors, who often experience life transitions such as moving to assisted living or updating eligibility forms, may find their benefits delayed due to overwhelmed state offices. Next is the issue that will likely hit seniors the hardest: increased redeterminations. Medicaid will now require states to recheck eligibility more often. For someone with fluctuating income, like hourly workers or people doing seasonal jobs, this means their coverage could be terminated even if they're still eligible. But even seniors on fixed incomes may encounter problems. Many elderly Americans have difficulty navigating online portals, which are increasingly the primary method of submitting renewal paperwork. Missed deadlines, sometimes caused by mail delays or system errors, could lead to unintended loss of coverage. The bill also tightens rules around home equity limits. Typically, Medicaid allows seniors to qualify for long-term care services even if they own a home, as long as the home's equity stays under a certain limit. This bill allows states to impose lower home equity limits, meaning seniors with modest homes may no longer qualify for long-term care coverage. This is particularly concerning for older Americans who work their entire lives to pay off their homes but still depend on Medicaid for nursing home care. Another key provision affects long-term care facilities. Previously, new staffing rules were introduced to ensure nursing homes had enough nurses and caregivers to provide safe care for residents. This bill places those staffing rules on pause. That means nursing homes are not required to hire additional staff, even if residents' needs increase. While this may save facilities money, it raises serious concerns about the quality of care seniors will receive. Families may notice increased wait times for assistance, slower responses to call buttons, or less frequent wellness checks. Beyond this, the bill pressures states to reduce Medicaid costs by limiting eligibility, lowering reimbursement rates, and cutting additional services beyond the federal minimum. Services that many seniors depend on, like dental care, vision care, transportation to medical appointments, or home health visits, could be scaled back as states struggle to meet new financial requirements. An especially controversial part of the bill bans federal payments to certain health care providers, depending on how individual states interpret the law. Some of these providers offer critical services for low-income women and families. While this may not directly affect every senior, any reduction in community clinics can strain local health systems, making it harder for older adults to get preventive care or diagnostic services close to home. Finally, the bill targets Medicaid financing strategies that states have used for decades. These strategies allowed states to stretch federal dollars further, often helping fund nursing home care, in-home support, and rural health programs. With these strategies now restricted, states will need to cut programs or find new revenue. Either way, seniors may feel the effects through reduced access, fewer services, or longer wait times. Tax changes: what seniors, workers, and families need to understand. In this fourth section of our audio guide, we move into a topic that affects nearly every American household: taxes. Whether you're a senior living on Social Security, a retiree with part-time income, a caregiver helping family members file taxes, or simply someone concerned about how new rules will affect your budget, this section is essential. The bill presents itself as a middle-class tax relief package. But as we walk through the details, you'll see that the benefits are mixed. Some seniors will see meaningful improvements, others may not feel much change at all, and a few groups might even lose tax advantages without realizing why. Let's begin with one of the most reassuring parts for many older Americans. The standard deduction stays high. This is the amount you subtract from your income before taxes are calculated. It's especially helpful for seniors because most older adults do not itemize their deductions. They simply take the standard amount. Many feared that the standard deduction would shrink back to pre-2017 levels, but this bill keeps it elevated, providing continued relief to people with modest incomes or limited retirement savings. Next is something specifically designed for seniors, the senior deduction. When the bill eliminates most personal exemptions, it makes an exception for older Americans. Seniors age 65 and above receive a special deduction that younger taxpayers no longer get. This is intended to help older adults shoulder the rising cost of living, medical bills, and inflation pressures. However, there's a catch. The deduction begins to phase out at higher income levels. That means seniors with strong pensions, significant investment income, or substantial retirement savings may not receive the full benefit. Now let's talk about families. One of the most widely discussed changes is the expanded child tax credit. Families with children will find it easier to qualify for the full credit, and the credit itself is larger. A portion of it is refundable, meaning even families who owe little or no income tax could receive a direct refund. This is especially helpful for grandparents raising grandchildren or supporting multi-generational households where every extra dollar matters. Another noteworthy provision involves the qualified business income deduction, often used by freelancers, small business owners, and independent contractors. If you drive for rideshare services, operate a small home-based business, rent out a property, or work on contract, you may already benefit from this deduction. The bill extends it with certain adjustments to income thresholds. For many semi-retired seniors who run small side businesses to supplement Social Security, this could offer meaningful tax savings. Now we move to one of the more attention-grabbing parts of the bill. No tax on tips and no tax on overtime pay. These provisions are designed to give extra take-home pay to workers in service occupations and hourly positions. While many seniors are retired, a growing number continue to work part-time to make ends meet. For older Americans still in the workforce, especially those in food service, caregiving, retail, or hospitality, these tax breaks can increase take-home pay without reducing eligibility for certain benefits. The details are still developing, and income caps may limit who qualifies, but the policy aims to reward people who continue to work hard even beyond traditional retirement age. Another new idea appears in the form of tax-deductible car loan interest. Today, when you finance a car, the interest you pay typically cannot be deducted from your taxes. This bill changes that. Seniors who purchase a vehicle, especially for medical appointments, caregiving responsibilities, or staying independent, could deduct the interest they pay on the loan. However, this deduction will likely exclude luxury vehicles and may require taxpayers to choose between this deduction and others depending on how they file. Perhaps the most unique and debated item in this section is the creation of Trump accounts. These are government-seeded savings accounts designed to help families build long-term financial stability. For each qualifying child born between 2025 and 2029, the government would deposit up to $1,000 into an investment-style account. Think of it as a starter savings program similar to a limited Roth IRA or baby bond. While $1,000 may not build life-changing wealth over 18 years without additional contributions, it could provide foundational savings for education, home ownership, or emergencies. Seniors raising grandchildren or supporting young families may appreciate this early head start. But as with many parts of the bill, there are limitations. Low-income households with little or no tax liability may not qualify for the full benefit. Meanwhile, the bill does not restore several deductions removed in 2017, such as full state and local tax write-offs. Seniors living in high-tax states, like New York, California, or New Jersey, could still feel financial pressure despite the new benefits. A few additional provisions support people with disabilities. The bill preserves ABLE accounts and continues allowing families to transfer unused funds from 529 college savings plans into ABLE accounts without penalty. It also permanently excludes from taxation any student loans forgiven due to death or disability. These measures provide security for older caregivers supporting disabled adult children or grandchildren. Overall, the tax section of the bill is a mixed bag, helpful for some, neutral for others, and limited for those living in high-cost or high-tax regions. Still, these changes will influence retirement planning, budgeting, and long-term financial decisions for millions of Americans. Energy, jobs, and the shift away from clean technology. In this fifth part of our detailed audio guide, we step into an area that touches America's future economy, job market, and environmental direction: energy and industrial policy. While this may seem far from the daily concerns of seniors, the truth is that energy decisions affect everything: utility bills, prescription costs, food prices, the job market your children and grandchildren depend on, and even the long-term stability of rural communities across the country. The new bill marks a major shift in national priorities. After several years of strong investment in clean energy, such as solar, wind, electric vehicles, and battery manufacturing, this legislation turns sharply back toward traditional fossil fuels and away from the incentives that helped alternative energy industries grow. To start, the bill expands tax breaks for oil and gas companies, particularly through deductions for intangible drilling and development costs. These are expenses tied to planning, preparing sites, and equipment used in drilling operations. Oil companies have long viewed these deductions as essential tools for keeping domestic energy production strong. Critics, however, say these tax breaks reduce incentives to build cleaner, renewable energy infrastructure. By expanding these deductions, the bill encourages increased drilling, expanded production, and faster development of fossil fuel-based energy projects. This could stabilize or even lower fuel prices in some regions, at least in the short term. For seniors living on fixed incomes who are sensitive to gasoline or heating costs, that could offer some relief. But the long-term trade-off is a slowdown in clean energy growth, a sector many communities have relied on for new job creation. One of the biggest changes is the elimination of the Advanced Energy Project Credit. This credit has been a cornerstone of America's clean technology expansion. It helped companies open new manufacturing plants for solar panels, electric vehicle batteries, wind turbine components, and other green infrastructure. With that credit removed, investment in these projects becomes more expensive and less attractive, especially when compared to fossil fuel alternatives that now enjoy new or expanded tax benefits. For communities that recently welcomed clean energy factories, especially small towns hoping to revive their economies, this change introduces uncertainty. Projects that were previously promised may be delayed, jobs that people were counting on may arrive slower or not at all. Seniors with children or grandchildren working in the clean energy sector may begin to see instability or layoffs depending on how quickly companies shift direction in response to the bill. Now, it's important to understand that this bill does not completely eliminate support for all clean energy sectors. Hydrogen projects, geothermal development, and certain niche renewable technologies remain eligible for some tax benefits. However, these programs are far more limited than the broad incentives that existed before. The overall shift is unmistakable. The bill puts its weight behind fossil fuel production and heavy industry, not renewable power or low-carbon manufacturing. This pivot raises several concerns for older Americans. First, clean energy plays a significant role in keeping utility bills stable over time. As renewable energy becomes more widespread, communities often see lower electricity prices. Rolling back incentives could slow the transition to cheaper long-term energy sources. Seniors living on Social Security or pensions may feel the impact in their monthly power bills. Second, many states have been investing heavily in clean energy job training programs, including those aimed at mid-career workers and even retirees seeking part-time work. With fewer incentives, these programs may shrink, limiting opportunities for older adults hoping to re-enter the workforce or earn supplemental income. Third, rural areas, especially in the Midwest and South, were counting on solar farms, wind projects, and battery plants to bring stable, long-term employment. Without federal support, these communities may return to relying heavily on industries that have historically fluctuated with global oil prices. Beyond energy production, the bill also affects industrial policy. It encourages domestic manufacturing through tax incentives for heavy production, mining, and large-scale infrastructure projects. In some ways, this could provide good-paying jobs that support families. But again, these benefits are concentrated in industries that have traditionally been difficult for older workers to participate in due to physical demands. For retirees concerned about environmental impacts, the bill also includes fewer protections for emissions and pollution compared to recent years. Communities near factories or drilling sites may see increased industrial activity without additional air quality safeguards. Seniors who are more likely to suffer from respiratory issues could be affected by these changes depending on where they live. Finally, it's important to note that the bill offers very little transition support for workers leaving the clean energy sector. There are no major retraining programs, relocation grants, or incentives to help skilled employees move into new fields. That lack of support could create real hardship for families and communities that depended on green energy growth. In summary, this section of the bill signals a national shift toward fossil fuels and away from renewable energy. While some seniors may see short-term financial relief through potentially lower energy prices, the long-term effects, reduced clean energy growth, job instability, and fewer environmental safeguards, could shape the future of American households for decades to come. Student loans, higher education, and the new barriers facing future generations. In this sixth part of our detailed audio guide, we shift our attention to an area that affects millions of American families, especially those helping children or grandchildren pursue higher education, student loans, college costs, and federal aid programs. Even if you are a senior who has long since finished your own schooling, these changes matter because student debt affects entire families. When young adults struggle financially, it often falls on parents and grandparents to step in, provide housing, cover groceries, or help with bills. Understanding these changes gives you a clearer picture of what the next generation will face. Let's begin with the most dramatic change in this section, a strict cap on federal graduate loans. Under current rules, students pursuing advanced degrees, such as master's programs, PhDs, law school, or medical school, can typically borrow up to the full cost of attendance. This includes tuition, books, housing, and living expenses. But under the new bill, the total amount a student can borrow for graduate studies is limited to $50,000. Not per year, total. This cap immediately raises concern. Many graduate programs cost far more than $50,000. In fact, some programs cost that much for a single year. This means future students will need private loans, which carry higher interest rates and fewer protections, or they'll have to rely on family support. For seniors who hoped their children or grandchildren could pursue careers in medicine, law, research, or advanced educational fields, this limitation creates a financial barrier that simply did not exist before. Supporters argue that this cap will force colleges to control tuition, reducing the inflation that has plagued higher education for decades. But critics warn that in the short term, access to graduate school will shrink for low-income and middle-income families. Those who cannot afford private loans or large upfront payments may have no pathway toward advanced degrees. The bill also tightens the rules around public service loan forgiveness, PSLF, and income-driven repayment programs. These programs were designed to help teachers, nurses, social workers, first responders, and nonprofit employees receive student loan forgiveness after a certain number of qualifying payments. Under the new law, fewer jobs will meet the criteria, and forgiveness may take longer to earn. For many families, PSLF was a lifeline, an assurance that service to the community would be rewarded. Without it, young professionals may face decades of repayment, limiting their ability to buy homes, raise families, or support aging parents. Next, the bill imposes new reporting requirements on colleges. Schools must publicly report graduate earnings alongside tuition costs. On the surface, this seems reasonable. Students deserve to know whether a degree will lead to a well-paying job. But the bill goes further. It threatens penalties and loss of federal aid for schools that provide poor value for money. This disproportionately affects for-profit colleges, which the bill explicitly targets. While some see this as necessary oversight, others worry that sudden enforcement could cause certain schools to close rapidly, leaving students stranded with incomplete degrees. On the more positive side, the bill expands Pell Grants for short-term programs. Think of training programs for nursing assistants, home health aides, electricians, coding boot camps, and other skilled trades. These programs are shorter and often more practical than four-year degrees, providing faster pathways to employment. For seniors raising grandchildren or supporting younger family members looking for quick career entry, this expansion may be encouraging. More vocational opportunities could help young adults gain stable employment sooner. Another important piece of this section involves student loan servicers, the companies responsible for billing and maintaining loan accounts. They will face stricter oversight, more accountability, and new rules to ensure accurate reporting and better customer service. Many borrowers, especially seniors with Parent Plus loans, have dealt with errors, lost paperwork, and misleading information. Stronger oversight could reduce these issues. Still, the heart of this section is about restricted access. Borrowing limits are tighter. Forgiveness programs are narrower. Schools face stricter rules. Students must provide more documentation, meet more requirements, and navigate more complex systems. Young adults from low-income families may find fewer opportunities to pursue higher education. And when they struggle under financial pressure, it often becomes seniors, parents, and grandparents who fill the gap, providing housing, transportation, or financial support. Finally, we must remember that education affects entire communities. When fewer people can afford advanced degrees, we see fewer teachers, fewer medical professionals, fewer scientists, and fewer specialized workers entering the workforce. Over time, this affects access to care, school quality, and local economies. Seniors rely on these services just as much as younger families do. In short, this section of the bill pulls back on federal support for higher education while placing more responsibility and cost on families. It may stabilize federal spending, but it creates new barriers for students and new burdens for households already stretched thin. For grandparents hoping to see their families thrive, these changes are important to understand. Immigration enforcement and the long-term impact of the new bill. In this final part of our comprehensive audio guide, we explore the sections of the bill focused on immigration, border enforcement, legal authority, and long-term implementation. Even if you're a senior who has never personally dealt with immigration issues, these sections still matter. They affect the national budget, community safety, labor markets, and the availability of caregivers, many of whom are immigrants working in nursing homes, home health agencies, or long-term care facilities. Understanding these pieces helps you see the broader picture of how this bill shapes our country's future. Let's begin with one of the most publicly discussed changes, the resumption of border wall construction. The bill requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to continue building the physical barrier along the southern border. Not only does it restore funding, but it also prevents future administrations from stopping the project through executive orders. In other words, the funding is locked in. Construction will proceed unless Congress explicitly votes to halt it, something that is politically difficult in most circumstances. Along with the wall, the bill provides large funding increases for Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE). These funds support hiring thousands of new agents, expanding detention facilities, and investing in surveillance technologies such as drones, cameras, and sensor networks. Supporters believe this will reduce illegal border crossings. Critics worry it will increase detention of vulnerable individuals and overwhelm immigration courts. More importantly, the bill dramatically changes asylum rules. It raises the credible fear threshold, making it harder for migrants fleeing persecution to seek safety in the United States. It also introduces a transit ban, meaning that anyone who passed through another country without applying for asylum there first becomes ineligible to apply in the U.S. This rule has been debated in courts for years, but now it is fully written into law. For seniors who care about humanitarian issues, this may raise moral concerns. For others, the focus may be on border security. Either way, it represents one of the most significant tightening of asylum laws in decades. The bill also raises visa application fees, making legal immigration more expensive. Families sponsoring relatives from abroad will feel this most. While seniors may not personally apply for visas, many depend on immigrant caregivers, home health aides, CNAs, nurses, and support workers. Increased visa costs could contribute to caregiver shortages, driving up prices for home care and assisted living services. Another notable change is the limitation on work permits for asylum seekers. Previously, people waiting for their asylum cases could apply for permission to work after a certain period. Under the new law, the waiting period increases significantly, meaning fewer asylum seekers will be allowed to work legally. This could push people into under-the-table jobs or leave families without income during long legal processes. The bill also restricts catch and release, a policy that allowed migrants to live in the community while awaiting court dates. Now, agents are required to either detain individuals or use expedited removal procedures. Detention capacity is already stretched, so these rules may lead to overcrowded facilities and faster but sometimes less accurate decision-making. One of the most unusual and far-reaching parts of this section is the legal mechanism that allows state attorneys general to sue the federal government if immigration laws are not enforced exactly as written. This means border states, or states with strong political positions on immigration, can challenge federal agencies in court. It gives states unprecedented power to force federal action, setting up potential future conflicts between state and national authority. Finally, the bill includes a provision that quietly affects access to justice for ordinary Americans, the requirement to post a financial bond before challenging federal actions in court. This means individuals who want to stop a federal decision, such as a benefit cutoff, a Medicaid denial, or an immigration ruling, may have to pay money up front just to file the case. For seniors living on Social Security, this creates a significant barrier. The courthouse doors remain open in theory, but in practice, many people will simply be unable to afford access. As we step back and look at the entire bill, from SNAP to Medicaid, taxes, energy, education, immigration, and legal enforcement, we see a consistent pattern. The bill aims to reduce federal spending, increase state responsibility, tighten eligibility for public programs, and restrict pathways for assistance. For some Americans, these changes will feel like greater stability. For others, especially seniors on limited incomes, the changes may feel like added pressure during already challenging times. What matters most is staying informed. Changes of this scale affect everything from grocery bills to medical care, from family stability to long-term planning. By understanding what's inside this 900-page bill, you're better prepared to make decisions, support your loved ones, and protect your financial future. Thank you for listening through all 7 parts of this guide. Knowledge is power, especially for older Americans navigating a fast-changing world. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hesitate to ask the questions that matter most to you and your family.